I feel like I haven't filmed a tag video in a while and there's a lot more preparation that goes into it than I remember. Hi everyone, my name's Chloe, welcome back to my channel. Thank you for being here today. Today's video is going to be the book recommendations tag. I was tagged by the lovely Becca from Becca Fowle. I will link her down below and her video that she tagged me in. I will also link the original creator as well. I cannot remember their name off the top of my head, but I will have them linked in the description if you would like to go and check out their video as well. And this is basically what it sounds like. It's just going to be me giving you a load of book recommendations, which I feel like all tags are book recommendations, but this is like just specific ones rather than kind of like feeding around different types of reading. It's just some general recommendations on books that you like. I don't know why I'm explaining this to you. Let's stop rambling and let's just start talking about some books that I recommend to you. I've tried to pick some that I haven't talked about that much, but to be honest, I haven't been filming like sit down videos that often. So I thought, why not just talk about some old favourites, and then if anyone's like newer to the channel, they can see what some of my favourites are. Some of these had to get mentioned in here because it wouldn't be a me video if I didn't talk about them. And you know what? The first book we're going to talk about very much fits in that category. So we have 20 recommendations to give, and the first one is a book you tell people is your favourite. And I feel like if you've been watching my channel over the last just over a year, it was just over a year I read this, you will know that there is a book that I have yelled about a fair amount that I really enjoyed, and I think a year later now I've read it 3 times and I would still say it is one of my favourites. And also I feel like it's an easy answer to give to people when, you know, you get that question from people who don't read, who go like, who find out that you're a reader, and they go, oh well, tell me what your favourite book is then. And you're like, how can you make me narrow it down? Like, what genre do you want? What age range are you looking for? I need specifics. I feel like this one is like an easy one to give as an overall, because then if they ask what it's about, I feel confident giving an answer of it. It's not like, sometimes I know we shouldn't feel ashamed of what we read, but sometimes like I'll say like, oh, my favorite book is this like sort of fluffy romance, and then they'll ask what it's about and I'll tell them, and I'm like, this doesn't sound like I'm giving a good recommendation at all. So my go-to answer is one that is actually a favourite, but also I just feel a little bit better saying it, and that is Babel by R.F. Kuang. So I will hold it up so you can actually see the title. This is the Illumicrate edition of it. I have many editions actually, but this is just the first one that I grabbed. Do I need to tell you what it's about? I don't know, like I should be recommending books in this video, so should I be telling you a synopsis? It's about a boy called Robin. He's from China and he's taken in by a wealthy white Englishman at a young age, and he's brought up by him and then gets sent to school, and when he gets to university age he is then sent to Oxford to study linguistics. And there are fantastical elements in this, so when he gets there, there is this whole sort of society built up around the linguistic school, and there is magic to do with silverwork and linguistics, and it becomes clear that it's kind of part of the reason that Robin is there is because of the use that he has, being someone who is able to speak more than one language. And that is sort of a general synopsis of it, but it is also like a criticism on colonialism and looking at how it is to be a student who is not white, who is not English, who is in one of these sort of historic universities and everything that goes alongside that. And I love this book so much, and I feel like this is a really bad way of summing it up. I should mention at the start of this video, I've been slightly ill. I'm feeling better, but maybe my thoughts aren't going to be the most coherent, but I do really love this book, and I've talked about it enough now, and I feel like you all know what it is. Like, it's been very popular over the last year. But yeah, Babel, however you want to pronounce it. I have to say this in every video. I know that the English pronunciation of it should be Babel, but there are comments about people who study linguistics at this school that don't make sense if you don't use the American pronunciation of Babel. So that's how I say it, but I am well aware that you can pronounce it different ways, which I think is really funny for this book in particular, and like how it deals with language. The fact that there is debate over how to pronounce the title of it just amuses me quite a lot. So next recommendation. So the next prompt is a book that is your guilty pleasure. And I struggled at first to find this because I was thinking like, I don't feel guilty about reading any of my books. And then I looked at my shelves and I realised that some of the books that I read when I was a teenager probably fit in this. Like, I know people have given the answer of Twilight in some of like these videos that I've watched, which yeah, understandable. But to be honest, I don't really want to reread Twilight now. And if I did, I know I would hate it. So it can't really count that as a guilty pleasure. But there is a series that I know has problematic elements in it, and I actively want to reread this series because it was fun. It was a good time. And that series is actually, I don't know if there is a title for this series, but it's Anna and the French Kiss, Lola and the Boy Next Door, and I Love and the Happily Ever After by Stephanie Perkins. Now, the one that I know particularly has some problematic elements in there is Anna and the French Kiss. And funnily enough, this one is actually my favourite in the series. And they're basically just YA romances, 2 of them being set around a school in France. So the first one, Anna ends up transferring there. She's American and she ends up moving there, and she meets a boy called Etienne, and there is a romance there, and that is where there is some problematic elements because, you know, Etienne does have a girlfriend at the beginning of this book. It's not the best. It's definitely very of its time. We then have got Lola and the Boy Next Door, and this one's set in San Francisco, as the cover would suggest, but we do have some links to the characters from the first one. I can't actually remember how they're connected, and I don't know if you don't realise they're connected until the third one, because the third one, Isla and the Happily Ever After, is set again back at the school, but it's the main character is Isla, and then the love interest is one of the friends from the first book. And I can't remember how they tie into the second one, but the second one's fantastic because you've got Lola and you've got Cricket, and I love Cricket so much. And I really, really want to reread these, like I said, even though I know they are very much a product of their time. And in saying that, I should say when they actually came out, and that was 2010. So yeah, very much a different era in terms of writing. Like, it's not that long ago, but like 13 years isn't that long ago, but also it really is. But I keep looking at these and keep wanting to reread them and feeling a bit bad about it. So definitely a guilty pleasure book. Okay, recommendation number 3 isn't really a recommendation because it's a book everyone loved but you didn't. I don't even have one to hold up because I unhauled this, and it is Crescent City by Sarah J Maas. Now, I know not everyone loves Sarah J Maas, but obviously, like, there is a large group of people that do very much enjoy her books, and I haven't even given a try to some of her other ones because I've read Crescent City, well, House of Earth and Blood, and I've read a book that she did for the DC series. It was a Catwoman book, which I know is very much not representative of her writing, but it is representative of her writing style, and that was the issue that I had, was the actual writing style. And I already didn't like it in the Catwoman book. That was the first thing I read, and then I read Crescent City and really, really hated it. And it was even worse because I feel like alongside her own characters, who I also didn't like, it just did not work for me. So I am going to give a miss to all of her other books because no one needs to hear me complain about things that they love. If you love it, enjoy. Just not an author for me, and I will not be revisiting her work ever again. Recommendation number 4 is a book that you read the fastest. Now, there is a few books that I've read in one day, but there is one in particular that stands out to me, and I don't have that book that sort of got me back into reading because I never really had a time where I wasn't reading. Like, I've been a reader as far back as I can remember. And I can remember the books that sort of got me into reading as a child, like made me fall in love with it rather than it just being like something that I did just because it was there. Like, I can remember the first book that was like one where it's like, oh no, this is my book. I'm not going to talk about what it is because we don't talk about that series on this channel. But there was a book later on that I feel like kind of got me back into reading a certain type of story, because I think although I consistently was reading throughout, there was a time where I just wasn't sure what I wanted to read. And it was that sort of transition between being a teenager and reading, well, the sort of teenage books that I read, which I've just shown, were things like the Stephanie Perkins books. It was a lot of the like YA contemporary romances. But when I was younger, I used to read a lot of fantasy, and then I kind of got out of the habit of reading that, and I couldn't find ones that I actually liked. And then I think because I was reading contemporary, but I was feeling a little bit like too old for YA contemporary, I started reading some adult contemporary, but I was a little bit too young for that because they didn't really do that much adult contemporary. There was sort of that bridge between YA. It seemed to be that I went from reading about teenagers to reading like Bridget Jones about somebody who is like my age now, which did not make sense, but anyway. And that carried on for like many years where I was just sort of trying to figure out exactly what it was that I liked. And at this point, whilst I was still reading, I was definitely reading a lot less than I am now, and I was still reading generally just a lot of YA contemporaries because that's where I felt safe. And then on a whim, I decided to order a book that was on offer on Amazon. It was like £5 for a hardback, and I heard good things about it online. I'm like, you know what, I will try that. I ordered it, and I remember sitting in my back garden because it was quite sunny on the day that I got it, and reading it all in one sitting because I just found the writing style to be something I could just get lost in. And I really enjoyed that reading experience, and then ended up picking a lot of kind of recommendations of other fantasies that had been recommended if you liked this. It had also been in a book subscription box, and that kind of got it on my radar as well. Maybe like I should subscribe to some of those and take some of those recommendations. And that book was Caraval by Stephanie Garber, which I know is like not the best written book. I do think her writing has got better over time. I do think the Once Upon a Broken Heart series is superior to this in terms of writing, but also I kind of love the Caraval series more because there was something about this first book in particular and following Scarlett and Julian and just falling in love with them as characters that I just didn't want to put it down. And I read it in like 4 or 5 hours, I think, which like I know some people would possibly read this even quicker, but I'm not the world's fastest reader. I'm not slow, but I'm not like super speedy either, and I tend to get distracted a lot. So being able to just power through this in one sitting, I was very impressed. And like I said, it sort of started a new love of kind of fantasy. Although I feel like I'm in like an in-between phase of that again at the minute, where I'm trying to figure out what I like. I feel like I'm going off of this type of book now. But it was great at the time. It also kind of ignited my love of getting special editions of things, because I ordered this a while after it came out and I still managed to get one of the ones with the hidden cover underneath. And like I said, subscribed to some subscription boxes off the back of this. And yeah, we all know where that led with gathering many special editions of many books. I've literally ordered special edition of the last book in the sequel trilogy to this week. The Fairy Loot edition of A Curse of True Love will be arriving with me at some point in the future. We all know it's not coming anywhere near release date, but I will be getting it eventually, so happy about that. Okay, I need to stop rambling because I'm talking a lot about these, but I also really want to talk a lot about the next one. So the next one is a book that deserves more hype. Now, I don't actually have the one I want to talk about, but it gives me an opportunity to talk about 2 books by the same author, and that author is Ashley Hostin. And the book I'm going to talk about, well, the book I have to hold up is The Dead Romantics, but the book I'm going to talk about is A 7 Year Slip. I actually love both of them and I would recommend both of them, but I just don't feel like I'm seeing these get enough love. I feel like we're very much in a moment of romancers getting all the hype online, and I'm loving that, but some of the ones that I really love, I don't feel like I'm hearing shouted about enough, so I would like to do some of that. I will say with this one in particular, it is a romance, but there is plenty of other stuff going on, and the other stuff going on gets quite heavy and quite intense, so maybe that is why it's not necessarily being recommended alongside sort of like cute romances. It's also not like steamy enough to be recommended alongside those types of romances either. But I really love this for the characters in there. I did really love the romance. Basically, it's about a character whose name I cannot remember. I'm saying I love the characters and then I can't remember. We've got Florence. So Florence is a ghostwriter for a popular romance author, and she's gone through a bad breakup and is struggling with writer's block as a result of it, because how can you write about romance when you're not really believing in it in real life? And she goes to her new editor, who doesn't actually know that she is the ghostwriter. She goes saying that the actual author needs an extension, and the editor is like, no, we're not giving it to you. It's not a great interaction. And then something happens separate to this where she ends up having to quickly rush back home because of a family tragedy. And that's what I mean by it gets a little bit heavier, because a lot of it is to do with grief and her sort of dealing with everything that happens after this event. But then also what happens is that when she gets there, there is a knock on the door of her family home. She opens the door and the editor that she had the difficult interaction with is stood there on her doorstep. The problem is that he is a ghost. Like, he is there, but he is dead. And things go from there, and that is a really like weird concept, because I promise it is still very much a romance, even though one half of this romantic couple is very much a ghost. But you know, I'm not going to explain anything else because you need to read it to find out. And then we have The 7 Year Slip, which is the one that just came out this year, and the reason I don't have a copy of this one is because I ordered the Fairy Loot edition, so I'm just waiting for it to arrive. It should be coming in the next like week or so, I think, because I've had the email saying it's preparing to ship. But in that one we've got some similarities in a setup, in that the main character again has some sad family stuff going on, but she's moved into this flat that has been in her family for a while, and when she gets there she finds out that every so often this flat just kind of travels 7 years into the past. So if there was someone else living there at the time, like she's gonna bump into them, and it turns out that there was a lodger there 7 years previous, and she ends up forming a bit of a romance going on with him. But you know, that sort of leads to the question of like, where is he in the modern day timeline? What is going on? There's also like this whole thing going on with her like questioning her career path. And I don't think I'm doing a great job of recommending it to you, but the romance in that one in particular is fantastic. It's a lot more romance heavy than The Dead Romantics is, and I love the character so much. And I really want to tell you the name of the main character, but all I can think of is her nickname, which is Lemon, and the copy that I'm getting has little lemons down the side of it, and I'm so excited for it. Everyone just please read The Dead Romantics, but particularly please read The 7 Year Slip by Ashley Poston. Okay, the next recommendation is one I'm gonna cheat a little bit for. So it is a book that is becoming a movie/TV show. Now, I'm going to cheat in multiple ways. So the first thing being that this is a book that I haven't actually read. I did used to own it, and then I unhauled it without reading it. But I keep being tempted to rebuy it and actually read it this time. The second cheat of it is that it is an adaptation that I have already seen, because it has kind of already been out, but not completely, and there's a new version of it coming out. And the third cheat is that it isn't actually a film or TV show. It's a musical, because it's me. What else would I talk about? So, starting previews on the 7th of October at the Apollo Theatre on Shaftesbury Avenue in the West End is The Time Traveller's Wife, the musical, which, like I said, I have already seen. I saw the out-of-town tryout that they did in Chester last year, and it is so good. And I'm so excited to see what they have done to it in that in-between time before it gets to the West End, because, you know, like, out-of-town tryouts are there to test things out. I feel like there were some tweaks that need to be made, but also it was fantastic. It's worth the cost of the ticket just to see the song Journeyman and how that is performed on stage. It's so good. The cast is incredible. It's led by David Hunter and Joanna Woodward, playing the main couple, Henry and Claire. David Hunter is someone that I have loved for a while now. I saw him in Waitress many, many times. Joanna Woodward was also fantastic. And then the supporting cast is great as well. You've got Tim Mahendran, who I had seen previously in *And Juliet*, and then Heba El-Sheikh, who I'd seen previously in *Everybody's Talking About Jamie*. And they provided some great comic elements alongside the kind of drama that was going on as well. And I really, really enjoyed this show, and I'm looking forward to seeing it again on the West End. And yeah, when I was thinking of film and TV adaptations, I looked through and I just couldn't find anything that I was as excited about as this adaptation of a book that is going to be a musical. And you know, it feels very on brand. So if you do have a chance to go and see The Time Traveller's Wife in London, I do recommend that you go and see it. So the next recommendation is one that I'm not going to talk about too much, because we've all heard me talk about it enough at this point, but it is a book that you reread the most, and we all know what it's going to be because it's my comfort read. I pick it up whenever. I was going to say I pick it up whenever I feel sad, but you know, it doesn't have to be sad. It can be happy. It can just be because I want to. I reread it most recently because the film adaptation was coming out, and that is Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. We all know the story of this one. Son of the President of the United States, Prince of the UK. Slight international scandal happens. They have to pretend to be friends. It ends up being that there is actually a romance that develops. I love it so much. I love the characters. I love the romance. I love the politics that goes alongside it. I will never stop saying good things about this book. Did we really expect me to pick anything else for this? Recommendation number 8 is a book from a genre that you don't typically read. Now, I struggled to find something for this because I felt like I could pick sci-fi, because I don't read that much sci-fi books, but I feel like there is enough of them that I read that could that really be classed as something I don't typically read. The other thing that I kind of probably don't read enough of, and by that I mean that I want to read more but I struggle to find ones that really interest me, is more of sort of literary fiction. So what I'm going to go with is a book that I read recently that I was terrified of reading, and then now I am terrified because I want to reread it and I know it's going to cause me pain, and that is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. I am not going to talk about this one too much because I saw a recommendations video, but I'm not recommending you read it. You should come to that decision of your own accord, which is very much how I was recommended this book. I was told that it was one of Meg's favourite books, but she was in no way recommending I read it, and that is very much where I am at. Like, this is a very well-crafted piece of fiction, but it is painful. And if you want to read it, please look up all the content warnings because there is a lot, but I will stand by this being a very, very good book. And if you do want to read it, go ahead. Recommendation number 9 is a book that deserves all the hype it gets. And for this one, I'm gonna go with The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is about a woman called Evelyn Hugo, who's an old Hollywood film star, and she decides to tell her story to this young journalist. And a lot of what people are interested in about her story is her many husbands, but that's not kind of what the story is actually about. Like it's told through that framing, but it's very much not what the story is about. And I love this so much. I do like books that center around sort of old Hollywood. It's just an interest of mine. And I really like Taylor Jenkins Reid's writing. And I feel like this was just like a perfect combo for me. And it was one that, again, I was a bit worried to read because I'd heard a lot of hype about it. And then when I started reading it, I'm like, oh no, I can see why this is well worth it. So had to be picked for this prompt. Question 10 is a book that you usually recommend when you are asked to give a recommendation. And this is difficult because like I need more context on that. Again, if someone asked me to give a recommendation, I'm going to be like, so what genre do you like? What age range do you normally read for? Give me things that you have read before that you have enjoyed, because I need more information. It's not just as simple as like this one book suits all. And there's a couple of questions later on that I'm very much like, I'm not giving an answer for this. But I feel like the one that I probably have recommended the most to people where I'm like not quite sure is this one, but also probably only because I do know the people that I'm recommending it to, and that is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. So I really like V.E. Schwab as an author anyway. They're one of my favorite authors. They write a lot of different like types of books. Everything tends to have like a fantasy twist to it, but I'd say that each of their books has like an identifying feature to it, and none of them feel like they're just sort of carbon copies of each other. And I feel like with some of the others, they are more, if someone tells me they specifically like this type of thing in a book, I could recommend it to them. So if they specifically want like more of a like fantasy adventure type book, I'm going to recommend A Dark Shade of Magic. I feel like if you wanted something a little bit more lyrical and more sort of like beautiful writing, I'd probably recommend Gallant. Like, you know what I mean? There's other specific identifying things in those books, whereas I feel like this one has a little bit of everything, and also I feel like it appeals to people who maybe aren't the biggest fantasy readers as well. So it's a nice kind of in-between book, and I have recommended it to people. I gifted it to my sister for Christmas one year, and I do keep trying to convince my mum to read it, even though she does not read fantasy at all. And I feel like yeah, I feel like this is one that I just feel like more confident recommending to people, because I think even if it's not going to be like an all-time favourite like it is for me, I feel like everyone can get something from this book. So this is usually what I would go for. Recommendation 11 is a book that has some of your favourite characters. Now, I'm trying not to repeat books in this, so like we could go for Red, White and Royal Blue again, but we're not going to. We're going to go for my other comfort read instead, and that is Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. This is just like a really nice friend group. Like, there's not much else to say for it. When I say favourite characters, it does tend to be that there's a friend group that I just kind of want to be a part of, and this is very much that. And I don't think I need to explain what Heartstopper is to you. I feel like most people probably already know who these characters are. I feel like if you're watching my channel, you will have awareness of Heartstopper. So I'm just going to move very swiftly on. And number 12 is a book you wish you could live in. And this is like strange in a way, because it's hard, because most of the like fantasy books are going to have some like disaster going on at some point that's going to make it difficult to want to live there during the time of this book. Although the question's not technically saying like you have to live there like at the beginning of the book. You could live there at the end when everything's all resolved and happy, hopefully. But there is a book that kind of jumped off the shelf for me just because I want to live there just for like the vibes and the aesthetic of it, and that is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. And I feel like the aesthetics of the cover are just kind of like telling you why. Like it just feels like a very pretty, beautiful book, and I would like to spend some time in that world. Now, I'm not saying that it would always be like perfectly happy, but I just feel like The Night Circus would be a fun place to go and visit, so why not? Number 13 is a book that you thought you would hate but ended up loving, and I don't tend to go into books thinking I will hate them unless I know that I actually will hate them, which was the answer for the Crescent City one earlier on. But so I've had to kind of twist this one again, and I've gone with one that I already disliked the first time I read it, and then I gave it a second chance and ended up really liking it a lot more the second time. So the first time I read it, I gave it 2 stars. The second time I read it, I gave it 5 stars, and that is Illuminae by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. And that is the wrong way around. It's Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. I will say it the way that it is on the book. But this is a sci-fi book told through mixed media, and it's definitely an experience reading it. And the first time I read it, I don't know if I just wasn't like, I was prepared for it because I knew what I was getting myself in for. I knew that it was one where you did have to like do the fun things of turning the pages around, and that it wasn't told like in a typical prose format. But I just didn't enjoy it very much the first time I read it, and gave it 2 stars. And then after I'd read other Jay Kristoff books, I decided to give it another chance and gave it 5 stars. So, you know, I would say that that is thinking you're going to hate it the second time you read it, because I was like, I'm going to try, but there is a strong chance that maybe this book just isn't for me. And then it turns out it very much was, and now I'm sad that I don't actually own these hardbacks, because this one is Meg's and I would like them. And you know, they are very easy to steal these days, but she does know where I live. Number 14 is a book that made you cry. I can't talk about this one for too long, not because it's going to make me cry, but because it will spoil a lot of things. But it is Assassin's Fate, which is the last book in the Realm of the Elderlings. So it's book 16 in total. It's book 3 in this particular trilogy. It's the 9th book we have with Fitz. There's so much that has already gone on before this, but I think that's kind of the key as to why it made me cry. Like, I followed this character Fitz since book 1, and I love him so much. The Fitz books are my favourite in this series. It's kind of what kept me reading the other stories when I wasn't as invested, particularly the ones that I always forget the name of, the dragon ones. The Rainwild Chronicles. I always forget what the actual thing is called. But yeah, the Fitz books are what kept me going through those, and I got to this one and I cried multiple times, which is not something that I very often do. Question 15 is a book that you wish you could read for the first time. I'm not actually going to hold this up because it is in the middle of the pile, because I've already spoke about it. I know I said I don't like repeating books in this, but Red, White and Royal Blue, I don't think I realised how much of a comfort read that was going to be for me when I first read it. Like, I enjoyed it, but I did not have plans to reread it as soon as I did, and I read it, I think, within a month, because after I finished it, I couldn't stop thinking about it. So I would like to kind of go back and be able to read it for a first time, knowing how important it was going to be, and kind of savour it a little bit more. But alas, I cannot do that, but I can always go back and reread it again. 16 is a book that could cure a reading slump. Now, many of the ones that I've already said could do that. Red, White and Royal Blue, we've just spoke about, could definitely do that. Heartstopper could do that. Graphic novels, as in general, tend to be something that I reach for in a reading slump, because then at least it's a quick read that I'm still reading something, so I don't kind of like build it up in my head that I'm not reading anything. So I'm going to pick up another graphic novel that I really like. Well, it's a graphic novel series. This is volume 3 apparently that I picked up. I thought I'd picked up volume 1, but apparently not. It is Lore Olympus by Rachel Smythe, and I actually need to buy volume 4 of this because volume 5 is coming out soon. But it did annoy me that the volume 4 is green when all the others have been like blue and purples. It's gonna look weird on my shelves, but I will need to buy it. But this is a Hades and Persephone retelling, and I just really like the artwork in here. And like I said, it is a very quick read, so it helps with reading slump, because the worst thing for me is if I sort of get in my head about it and think, oh, I'm not reading anything, and then I just kind of get scared of starting something. Whereas if I can keep on reading things that I know are going to be easy reads, then at least like there's not that gap. It's the gap that gets me. Question 17 is a book that you think everyone needs to read. I don't have an answer for this. Like I said, there are too many factors that go into this, because not everyone likes the same types of books, and I could very easily tell you any of the books that I've already recommended, apart from like obviously the one where I said I didn't like it, but I could very easily tell you any of the ones I've already recommended, but then there'll always be that one person I'm like, no, not for you though. So I don't have an answer for this. We're going to move on. We're getting so close to the end, but question number 18 is a book that you think would make an amazing movie. Now, I'm going to say I actually don't want a movie for this. I want a limited series, and I want one for every book in this series and in the author's other series as well. Basically, I just would very much like to see Laini Taylor's work adapted for the screen, because I think it would be stunning. Like, just visually, it would be so good. So I would want to start with Dosab, obviously, and do this entire series, like I said, as like a limited series. So we had like 1 season per book, and then we could have like a little like one shot of Night of Cake and Puppets in the middle as well, and then we can move on to Strange the Dreamer, and it'd be a great time for all involved. I feel like it needs to happen. Question number 19 is a book you wish everyone would give a shot, even if it's out of their comfort zone, which again falls into like a similar thing to a book I think everyone needs to read. I don't think there is one book that I think everyone should give a shot, because for those going to be one person that it's just going to fundamentally be wrong for. But rather than like an individual book I think everyone should give a shot, I do think that everyone should at some point try to read a classic, because there are so many different classics out there, and I feel like there is one for everyone. It's just finding what you like. And I'm just going to hold up a couple of my favourites here, and just to get to show some of my pretty editions more than anything else. Classics that I have enjoyed include Pride and Prejudice, because, you know, if you're a romance girly, why not see sort of like part of the history of the romance genre, because I feel like a lot of romances these days owe a lot to Jane Austen. So, and speaking of, this isn't actually my favourite Jane Austen, this one is, and this is Persuasion. So yeah, I would recommend these ones. And the other one that I picked up is The Great Gatsby, which is a very short read as well. This actually makes it look longer than it is, but it's another one that I really enjoy and could go back to multiple times. But I understand that it is not a classic for everyone, but I feel like there is a classic for everyone. So that's kind of my way of getting around this answer. And then question 20 is a book that you will never forget. And I found this one quite hard because I'm like, I've picked so many of my favourites already. So just most things that I've said in this video, like I'm not going to pick a particular one, but just like pretty much everything that I've said in this video is ones that clearly are memorable because I'm still talking about them, some of them many years after I've read them. So I think that's everything. This has been a longer, more rambly video than I expected it to be. So we're just going to leave it there. I'm not actually going to tag anyone in this because I feel like my friends have all been tagged already and I don't know who has been tagged and who hasn't done it. And my brain, as I said at the beginning of this video, is just not in a place to like organise those sorts of thoughts right now. But if you haven't been tagged and you want to do it, take this as you being tagged. Feel free to say that I tagged you in it. And that actually is everything now. Thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff down below, and I'll see you guys soon with a new video. Bye.